Okay, let's go ahead and call the Senate to order. The Sergeant Arms will please secure the chamber doors. Members, please take your seats. After the pictures, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mr. President.
All right, Senators. This morning we are very pleased to have Father Richard D. Meadows, Jr. of the St. James Episcopal Church in Baltimore, Maryland, guest of the distinguished senator from the 41st District. Please rise for the invocation.
I bring you greetings from St. James Episcopal Church on Lafayette Square in Baltimore. I thank Jill Carter for the invitation and also give honor to Senator Antonio Hayes, who serves my district. Shall we pray? God of our weary years, God of our silent tears, Thou who hast brought us thus far on the way, Thou who hast by thy might led us into the light, keep us forever in thy path, we pray. We ask, Creator God, for your presence in these proceedings. We ask that your blessing be upon Maryland. Please inspire the people who govern and help them to have and strive for justice, equality, and human dignity for its citizens. Forgive all of us, for we have not always been the more perfect union. We have not always been able to share its blessings. However, in spite of our times of failure, we thank you for the successes. Bless these senators before us today, invested with the legislative powers of government, who are the trustees of the public good. Please make them more aware of their accountability to our citizens. Keep their motives pure. Manifest our liberties, bringing forth a safe, effective, and wholesome state. Allow them to have wisdom to reform the old and making all things new. Help them to establish a government that is fair and equitable for all. Let them strive together for the good and happiness of all men, women, boys, and girls. Relieve the pressure and anxiety that comes with this responsibility. So we ask in prayer and supplication with thanksgiving that you allow them to feel your Spirit as their guide. Give them the peace which passeth all understanding, keeping their hearts and minds through you. Finally, we remember the words, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report. If there be any virtue and if there be any praise, let us think on these things. And we close this prayer with the words of James W. Johnson, lest our feet stray from the places, our God, where we met thee, lest our hearts drunk with the wine of the world we forget thee. Shadowed beneath thy hand may we forever stand, true to our God, true to our native land. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend. Appreciate you. Chair recognizes the senator from the 41st District.
Thank you much, Mr. President. Members of the body, I'd like you to join me in thanking those inspiring words from Father Richard D. Meadows, Jr., and welcome him and his wife, Linda.
Welcome, Linda.
They are from St. James Episcopal Church, which is for 198 years been spreading light through faith, love, and service. Now, St. James is actually physically located in the 40th District, but it's been my family church for multi-generations since my great-grandmother, Minnie Davis. Wow. And everyone in my family's been married there and unfortunately most buried there. So I'm very, very thankful to have you here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's pretty amazing. Without objection, senators, we will certainly journalize the Reverend's remarks this morning and appreciate his service and his wife joining us today, and thank them for honoring us with your presence this morning. Thank you. All right, senators, has everyone recorded their presence in the chamber? It appears so. The clerk will take the call. With 45 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland is now in session. Do we have any introductions? Any introductions today? We have another resolution from the senator from the capital city. Chair recognizes the senator from the 30th.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I think it's District 30 week here in the Senate, and I appreciate the Senate's grace with that. I'm here rising today to celebrate the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, which is located in District 30, but certainly serves not just the entire state of Maryland, but the entire Chesapeake Bay watershed. So, Mr. President, the Bay Foundation is the largest environmental organization devoted to the restoration and protection of the Chesapeake Bay. It has over 300,000 members, over 109,000 of which are here in Maryland. Most notably, the way I think it touches all of our districts, it's through its environmental education programs that have been a priority for CBF from the very beginning, with a vision that the best place to teach people about the Bay is on it. In 1973, CBF started its education programming in earnest with the acquisition of a 44-foot workboat and the donation of an environmental education center on Meredith Creek right here in Annapolis. 50 years later, CBS has provided a meaningful watershed experience to more than 1.5 million participants, mostly students and teachers. CBF education programs can be found across the Bay watershed, ranging from student field programs to a more immersive student leadership program to high-quality professional learning programs for teachers. I ask the body to join me in recognizing the Bay Foundation on its 50th anniversary of their educational programming, and I'm so thrilled to be joined by the CBF team. First of all, my constituent, my neighbor, and my dear, dear friend, Hillary Falk, who is the brand new president of CBF. I'm so proud of her. Tom Ackerman, Vice President for Environmental Education, Ann Pelham from the Board of Trustees, David Galanter, a CBF educator, Karen Mullen, CBF educator, Paul Wiley, CBF educator, and Sean Ridgely. I'm so happy that they brought their educators here with us this morning, and Mr. President, I ask that the resolution be read across the desk.
Clerk will read the resolution in full.
Be it hereby known to all that the Senate of Maryland offers its sincerest congratulations to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation in recognition of 50 years of environmental learning experiences on our streams, rivers, and the Chesapeake Bay for over 1.5 million students and teachers. The entire membership extends its best wishes on this memorable occasion and directs this resolution be presented on this 30th day of March, 2023.
The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? If so, the clerk will take the call. To the wonderful folks of the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, congratulations on 50 successful years. We are so thrilled and honored by your work. Thank you so much. Thank you. All right. Other introductions this morning? Other introductions? Yes, Chair recognizes the senator from the 16th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope the body will join me in welcoming the doctor of the day today, who is Dr. Diane Snyder from District 16. In addition to a robust gynecology practice in Rockville, she also serves our students at the University of Maryland College Park. Welcome to Dr. Snyder.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Thanks for your work today. Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Up in the gallery, we have some students and family from the Harbor School. Harbor School has campuses both in Baltimore and Annapolis, with the latter being located in District 33. Harbor School believes all children can thrive when they are taught the way they learn best. Their mission is to provide a supportive, caring, and individualized education to students from all over the state who may have needs not met best in other learning environments. Serving students grades 1 through 12, they teach acceptance and a celebration of differences. So I'd ask you to give them a round of applause. Thank you.
Welcome to the Harbor students. Wonderful. Chair recognizes the senator from Frederick County.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, some of you may recall several years ago in the House, I made a similar introduction, and so I'm going to have to ask your indulgence for a moment because I had to write all this down, because otherwise I'm going to be a little bit all over the place. But I just want to take this opportunity to join me in a warm Senate welcome for some very important people in my life. In the gallery above, and if you would please stand, Jessica Fast, her fiance Michael, my godson, little Foo, Matthew, and his uncle Randy. Matthew's father and his uncle Randy, they stayed with me and my family for the majority of their first 12 years of life, becoming my little brothers. Randy becoming a scientist, and Matthew followed in my footsteps, joining the United States Army Military Police Corps, serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. Matthew went on to become a police officer, serving with me at Frederick Police Department. And on May 4th, 2016, after working his shift with Frederick Police, Matthew went home and suddenly passed away at 29 years of age. A week after his passing, Jessica learned that they would be expecting their first child, little Fu. Little Fu has blessed our lives with continuing his father's legacy through his smile, his walk, his wit, love of country, and family, enriching all our lives. Like his father, he is the best of us. I love you, little man, and if you would, please welcome them to a good Senate welcome.
Absolutely. Thank you for sharing that, Senator, and we're pleased and we're truly, truly honored by their presence. Thank you. All right, other introductions this morning? Other introductions? No, I see oh yes, Chair Rackham and Senator from Baltimore City. I don't think they're here yet.
They're not here yet? I'll wait until they get here.
We'll wait, okay. Any others? Any others? The Senator from the 35th is ready for opening day today. I can't believe I forgot my orange tie. We'll have to wait for the home opener for the orange, so it's a Let's Go O's day today. All right, so anything else before we jump in today? If not, let's be considered the reading of the journal from the prior legislative day. We have a message from the House. This is number 1. Senate bills passed, yeas and nays. Clerk will read the bills.
Senate Bill 3, Senator Augustine, 988 Trust Fund Funding. Senate Bill 14, Senator Augustine, Health Occupations Clinical Graduate Alcohol and Drug Counselors, Licensure. Senate Bill 35, Senator Kagan, Open Meetings Act, State Ethics Commission, Maryland State Agency Transparent Act of 2023. Senate Bill 101, Senator Augustine, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Collaborative Care Model Services, Implementation and Reimbursement Expansion.
Majority Leader moves so be considered the reading of the bills. We have another message from the House. This is number 31. Clerk will read the bill.
House Bill 772, the Speaker, Human Relations, Civil Rights Enforcement, Powers of the Attorney General, Rules.
All right, the bill referred to the Rules Committee. We have a message from the Prince George's County Executive. Clerk will read the message.
Dear President Ferguson, pursuant to Chapter 811 of the 2017 Laws of Maryland, I'm pleased to appoint Mrs. Othera Bridgewater Sims to serve as Chair, Prince George's County Board of Licensure Commissions. She is appointed to serve a 4-year term from March 29th, 2023. I request that the Senate grant its advice and consent to this appointment. Sincerely, Angela D. Also Brooks, County Executive.
All right, message having been read is journalized, ordered journalized. Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand before you honored today to introduce a Senate joint resolution and ask for a motion to suspend the rules. On this introduction, this joint resolution, as many of you know, we are in the state of Maryland is in competition, in intense competition with the Commonwealth of Virginia to secure the FBI headquarters. We believe that we deserve it. We have fought for it here in Prince George's County and in the state. It took a little bit of time to get the language just right, and we wanted to make sure that the House and the Senate sends a loud message that we are in strong support of welcoming in the FBI headquarters here into the state of Maryland. And with that, I ask for a motion to suspend the rules for this introduction of this joint resolution, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. So the Senator has moved to suspend the rules for the purposes of a late introduced bill. It's a joint resolution, so it does not have to. We wouldn't have to waive the rules to go directly to committee because it will go to the Rules Committee no matter what as a joint resolution. So the question is just whether to suspend the rules. Are there any objections to the Senator's motion to suspend the rules? Without objection, the rules having been suspended, the bill will be referred to the Rules Committee as its primary bill assignment. Senator from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Mr. President. I also rise to request the suspension of the rules for a late introduction of a bill and to request the bill be directly referred to the appropriate standing committee. I first want to thank the entire body for signing onto this bill as a co-sponsor. As a senator who represents Charlotte Hall Veterans Home, I was deeply concerned and disappointed to hear reports of the mistreatment of the veterans at the Veterans Home, particularly that the facility was given a 1-star rating and an abuse warning by the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. I was incredibly disappointed not only to hear how our veterans were treated, but also that these deficiencies could be serious enough to result in fines, while the General Assembly was left unaware of these ongoing issues and therefore not able to fully carry out our duty of oversight. Despite my efforts to support the resources necessary to serve our veterans residing at Charlotte Hall, I was not informed until recently of any problems that were occurring. Once the new administration took office and the governor's office and the Department of Veterans Affairs made us aware of what they had discovered had been taking place at Charlotte Hall, I reviewed the reportments made by CMS. In addition to the mistreatment of the residents observed in their review, I also learned that the facility had been fined multiple times in 2021 and 2022. With a service this important, we should never be asking ourselves how we are unaware of this happening. It is unclear whether this was intentionally kept from this body and local leaders, but it is crucial that we ensure that this never happens again. Transparency is the key when we are all working together, and I am grateful to the Governor and the Secretary of Veterans Affairs for bringing this issue to my and all of our attentions. I am committed to partnering with them and with the members of this body on whatever is needed for us so that the residents of the Veterans Home who come from all parts of this state receive the quality care that they deserve. All Marylanders deserve to be treated with dignity and respect, especially those who are willing to risk their lives fighting for our freedom. I know that this is not a reflection of all who work at the Veterans Home and appreciate those who have advocated and cared for our veterans there. But it is time to consider what we can do not only to address the current conditions, but also to prevent them from ever happening again. I am confident that the administration and the Department of Veterans Affairs are addressing the immediate need for reform as quickly as possible. However, I believe that it is necessary to ensure that major problems such as these cannot be swept under the rug or kept from the oversight of the General Assembly during future administrations. This emergency legislation to require increased reporting of deficiencies cited and enforcement action imposed at state-owned nursing facilities by contractors operating those facilities would offer all of us the opportunity to see issues as they occur and work together to be part of the solution to best serve our state's veterans. I respectfully request that the suspension of the rules for this introduction of the bill and so that the legislation can go directly to the appropriate standing committee.
All right, the senator has moved to suspend the rules for the purposes of a late filed bill and to send the bill directly to committee. Are there any objections to the senator's joint motion? Without objection, the motion carries. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 974, this is an emergency bill by Senator Bailey, Finance.
All right, the bill will be referred to its standing committee. We went a little too quickly on the last one, so if we could read the resolution and its appropriate standing committee.
Senate Joint Resolution Number 5, the President rules.
Excellent. All right. I think we're all set. Thank you, Senators, for helping us work through that on those late files there. Let's go ahead and start the day with our layover calendar. This is calendar number 31. Clerk will read the bill. Oh, actually, Madam Clerk, before we do, if the senator from the 40th District has some guests.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe in the balcony behind me, I'm going to ask the students from Green Street Academy to please stand. Founded in 2010, Green Street Academy is a 6-12 public charter school located in West Baltimore. Now serving 875 students annually, Green Street Academy was designed to transform how scholars prepare for college and careers in the 21st century through the lens of environmental, human, and personal economic sustainability. Green Street Academy is also proud to have maintained a 95% graduation rate over the last 4 years. I'm going to read that again. Green Street Academy is proud to have maintained 95% graduation rate over the last 4 years. Present today with the students are staff Jonathan Weber, their government teacher, and Jennifer Fisher, their geometry teacher. Colleagues, please join me in giving the Green Street Academy a warm Senate welcome.
Welcome, Green Street Academy. It really is an amazing place. Is the fish pond still happening? The fish growing the fish still up, still at the school? Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. They've got some hands-on experience. It's great. Thank you all for being here today. We're so pleased that you all could join us. Hope you enjoy seeing democracy in action. All right, if the clerk could read the bill.
Senate Bill 516, Senator Feldman, Cannabis Reform. Question is on the adoption of the 17 committee amendments and the favorable report.
All right, Senators, the question before the body is on the 17 committee amendments. Any discussion of the amendments? Any discussion of the amendments? Any objections to the 17 amendments? Without objection, the 17 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. On the report, Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th District.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have an amendment at the appropriate time.
Perfect. Let's do the report. Let's just do quickly the amended report. Any discussion on the report before we adopt the report? If not, oh yes, Chair recognizes the senator from Southern Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. If the floor leader could yield for a question.
Will the floor to yield? Senator may proceed.
Sure.
Just a couple quick questions. Happened to open my email this morning and realized that I had quite a few from about this bill, and I tried to get up on it, and I just couldn't. So I've heard from these constituents about cannabis use for medical purposes, and the one in particular was very concerned because it does such a benefit for his treatment, and he's worried about the competition that might exist, so that he would not be able to get his medical marijuana for treatment when it becomes available for everyone to be getting it recreationally.
So thank you for that question. Basically what the bill does is it has those current licensees that are offering medicinal cannabis to patients, they convert to basically being dual licensees. So they will continue to offer medicinal cannabis as well as offering adult use cannabis. In addition, there is a consideration that some of the medicinal cannabis patients would have special hours where they might be able to receive their prescriptions so that they can sort of have a fast lane to get their medicine.
So I guess he's worried that we're going to run out of supply. Is there any fear of that?
We don't have any fear of that. As you might recall from the exchange yesterday, we have allowed for in the bill plenty of canopy space for our growers. We're adding processor licenses and dispensary licenses. So we believe there will be plenty to go around for our medicinal patients and others.
Thank you. And if you could indulge me just for simple couple questions. You know, where I come from, we have a lot of people that spend their day on a charter boat. And they come down and they go fishing. And the one thing they bring on that charter boat is they bring alcohol, because they're all out there having a great time. And these charter boat captains are federally licensed. The boats that they're on are federally documented. And they are inspected by the U.S. Coast Guard. And so they were very interested to say what happens to them when a person has marijuana on the boat, because the Coast Guard has informed them that it is still absolute zero tolerance. And zero tolerance means that they lose their license and potentially their boat. And I didn't know if the committee looked at all into that, on how we would treat a person that had marijuana on one of these federally documented or licensed boats.
Thank you for that question. So basically what I would suggest is that those boats are privately owned, and that the owner of the boat would establish whatever rules pertain to what can happen on the boat and what doesn't happen. We did, through the bill and through the voters' confidence, we are setting up a framework for adult recreational use of cannabis. Medicinal cannabis, as you know, has been in place in the state for some time, and so this really doesn't change that. Similarly, someone might have asked if they could take their medicinal cannabis on the boat. I would say that that boat is the property of that owner, and they establish the rules about what's allowed and what's not allowed on their property.
Okay, so they could actually put up, like we have, there are signs about pollution placards, there's signs about anything else.
No smoking.
There are signs that they can put up about no smoking. But so they could put up a sign that would say, absolutely, under the federal law, it's not prohibited even though the state allows it.
Right, and I certainly want to make it their responsibility to make sure that they're abiding by the laws that pertain to their business. So we certainly don't want them to fall into jeopardy.
They were just worried about the fact that federally they heard this was a strict liability offense if a passenger of theirs had it on board the boat, that they in fact could lose their license.
Their boat, their rules.
Okay, and they're the captain.
That's right.
Right? Okay, I got it. And the last thing is some of us have DOT licenses. So we all have to go through DOT physicals. Every second year I go through one, and they check your heart rate, your blood pressure, they check your vision, and then the third part of that, they take you into the bathroom and you have to give a urine sample. And then they check you right away for any type of controlled dangerous substances, and if you pop positive for marijuana, you lose your license.
And so my response to this would be the same. Their boat, their rules. And so we did not make any changes to the employer's ability to take, and screen their employees. And we certainly don't make any changes to the federal government's ability to screen employees.
So my question is, and I'm talking about me driving, right? If I'm driving a tractor trailer, when I go to take that urinalysis and I was around somebody that had been smoking marijuana, what are the chances that if I inhale secondhand smoke that I would pop positive so that I would actually lose my license?
Yeah, all of the science refutes the fact that being exposed to secondhand smoke would enter your bloodstream and cause you to have a positive test result.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think, yes, Chair Recognized Senator from Baltimore City. On the report.
Thank you, Mr. President. Would the floor leader yield for a question or two?
Senator may proceed.
Thank you. Madam Floor Leader, first I want to commend you and the committee on comprehensive amendments that I think overall present a thorough and comprehensive bill, and efforts at equity are baked into the bill. But I do have one concern. I don't see anywhere in the bill any provisions for persons that might still be criminalized or arrested once this goes up as legal July 1, 2023. I'm concerned about individuals that are not able to immediately avail themselves of the legal licensing market and might still be arrested for possession with intent to distribute. The bill doesn't make any provisions for that, does it?
Well, to the extent that the bill and that the committee adopted, along with our partners in Budget and Tax, a 35% revenue to go to a fund that's called the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund that would allow nonprofits in areas that are harmed, that have been harmed by arrests associated with cannabis, to develop programs and provide services to those impacted. So to that extent, we believe that we have provided significant revenue for programs to be developed.
I appreciate that, and I think that's wonderful, but I am still concerned because what we all know, and we've had this debate now for 10 years since decriminalization in 2014 in Maryland, about the criminalization of poor Black and brown people. The fact that in some counties in Maryland, Black people are 8 times more likely to be arrested for marijuana than others. My concern is that Black people will still be overly arrested, and there's no pathway to avail themselves of an opportunity to go from illicit sales to legal sales. And I think that's important. Some states have really baked that into their legislation, and I'm curious about why we aren't doing that here.
No, again, I thank you. This bill really is establishing a regulatory framework, And again, we believe that that reinvestment and repair fund can be used by communities to address just the issue that you've raised. This bill is not an attempt to address all of the issues pertaining to cannabis and the arrest. It really is setting up the framework for the program. But because we share your concern about those communities that have been harmed, the largest percentage of the funding that we have outside of the general fund in the bill goes to help repair and reinvest in communities that have been impacted.
I appreciate that. Was it discussed at all, or was it the committee's will to continue, though, to have, in the meantime, to continue to have persons arrested, prosecuted, and convicted for the very same activities that our now legal licensees are able to do for major profit?
Again, the bill is not a criminal justice bill. It really is just setting up the framework for the legal distribution of cannabis for adult use. So this is not, that probably sounds like a bill that might be addressed by another committee. That wasn't what this bill was to address.
Thank you, Madam Floor Leader. I'm sure in the discussions, and I think that I even heard yesterday, that there was talk about the fact of the black markets continuing to prevail in states that have legalized, and there's been difficulty with limiting the black market in many states. At the same time, there's still been a disparate impact of arrest and criminalization on black and brown people, and actually wherever there's a minority, because in South Dakota, it's Native Americans that are still being arrested at twice the rate of everyone else, even under legalization. And so I'm wondering if any thought was given to the fact that one of the ways to eliminate or reduce the black market would be to create a pathway for people that are in the illicit market already, that are being criminalized, to transition into the legal market, so that we won't wind up continue to have two Marylands, one where rich conglomerates make more money and black people continue to be criminalized and incarcerated for the same activity.
I don't have any additional answer for you, colleague. Basically, I've said that this bill is setting up the regulatory framework, and while the work groups that have existed, as you know, even since 2019, have considered the impact of the illicit market on communities that have been disparately impacted, this bill was about establishing the framework for the legal market for adult use, and we did not establish, except for grant funds to help those impacted communities participate in the revenue that will be generated, we did not create an education or pathway for those who may have been engaged in illicit market. And quite honestly, we don't know that the illicit market participants are limited to any one substance. So the data that we get from other states might not even determine what substances those that are engaged in the illicit market are engaged in distributing. This bill really is singularly focused on establishing the framework for Maryland to have a legal adult use regulated industry.
Thank you. And according to the bill, the social equity grants are up and running. I believe it's 2024. Is it January 2024? They begin to be, the applications go out for social equity?
Correct. January 2024 is the first round, yes.
So that's next year, and then there'll be a considerable amount of time between when they are issued and when persons are awarded them. And I don't know the answer to this question. In any part of the legislation where persons are required to either get licensed or some type of certification to participate at different levels, including possibly social equity grants, how are background checks or prior criminal records dealt with?
Now, basically, we stood up through this bill a Maryland Cannabis Administration. and these are very experienced in the areas of administering these programs that are established for regulated industries. And so we did not determine what the application criteria would be. We left that for our regulating agency, which will be the Maryland Cannabis Administration. So we did not pursue the background checks and all of that information in the bill. We're leaving that to the administration.
Thank you very much.
All right. Any further discussion on the report? If not, all in favor of the amended report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Chair has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have one committee amendment that was adopted in our voting session that we failed to get in the bill. It's really a technical amendment that changes the date by which the from October 1, 2022 to December 31, 2022. It's the date that the canopy size is determined for our existing cannabis growers. So, Mr. President, I would move the amendment.
All right, the floor leader is moving the amendment. Any discussion from the committee amendment? Any objections? Without objection, the amendment is adopted. Other amendments to the bill or its title. Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th district. Senator has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
No, I have it printed. Thank you.
And again, pages, feel free to, if a senator is otherwise occupied, just gently drop it on their desk and move it along. Keep the party moving. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. We started this discussion briefly yesterday. This has to do with the Maryland Emergency Medical System Operations Fund, and this amendment earmarks 1% of the revenue to go to this fund. And let me tell you what is included in that. The Maryland Emergency Medical System Operations Fund. Oh, excuse me. Comment. Wrong page, sorry. The money in the fund shall be used solely for the following line items: medically oriented functions of the Department of State Police, Special Operations Bureau, Aviation Division, the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical Services Systems, the R. Adams Calley Shock Trauma Center at the University of Maryland Medical System, the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute, and also the Senator William H. Amos Fire, Rescue, and Ambulance Fund in accordance with the different provisions. So this 1% doesn't sound like a lot for emergency services, I know that, but 1% would serve initially as a placeholder, and the number I know would need to be adjusted in the future as we see the amount of funding coming in and so forth. Now, I would assume opposition to this amendment will say that this MSOF, MEMSOF is funded through FY24 and come back later and find it in the different funds and so forth. But to me, this is a priority. This is a priority piece of legislation that we're dealing with here, and we should make that clear through this amendment that emergency services are a priority in this legislation. Another argument would be, well, you'll get all kinds of folks that come in and will want funding for this or that through that, but EMS is maybe the greatest affected segment, and they definitely should have. They should be at the top of the list as we look to fund where these funds are going to be allocated, in my opinion. And let me just tell you a story, if I may, quickly. My time in the fire service, we had a MVC, or motor vehicle collision. This is just one example. There was a car that came out of a county road, didn't stop at a stop sign, hit an embankment. I was on the crew. It was some younger folks that were in the car. Luckily, they didn't hit anybody else. They just ran to the bank. Nobody was seriously injured. We got the patients out of the car, packed them, and they were transported to the local hospital. Now, one thing we noticed, there was a bag of a certain substance thrown up on the bank. They tried to hide it before the police showed up. Now, in the fire service, it's not our job to do the investigation on these accident scenes, honestly. It's the job of law enforcement. But I know what I saw, we know what we smelled, and the data that I referenced yesterday will show that we're going to have increases in these MVCs, and there's going to be more fatalities, and that is another reason why EMS is going to be greatly affected and needs designated funding from day one with this legislation. You know, this will really be our third bite of the apple on this legislation. Last year, you know, I opposed putting it on the ballot because I thought if we wanted to, we could do it here without it going to the ballot. But it did go to the ballot. You know, I showed up at the local precinct and I voted against it in the ballot box. But you know what? The citizens of the state of Maryland spoke loud and clear. They wanted legalization. So it's our job to set the best guidelines we can and a framework going forward. So with this amendment, we can show that emergency services are a priority, and it would honestly give me the peace of mind to support something like this, knowing that that is a priority. So this amendment is a chance for us as a General Assembly, as the Senate of Maryland, to make a strong statement that EMS is going to be a priority and not an afterthought as we go through this bill. So with that, Mr. President, I would encourage my colleagues to vote for this amendment and would request a roll call.
All right, senators move the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader. It was jointly assigned. But
Thank you, Mr. President. So this bill, as everyone knows, was jointly assigned with Budget and Tax, so I'd ask if the Chair of Budget and Tax would yield.
appears so. Let's hear from the Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. First off, really share the Senator's commitment to emergency medicine. This is critical. As you may recall earlier, when we did the budget, we actually increased the budget. We're transferred funds for this purpose in the form of $35 million. And not only did we ensure that it would keep the fund in good shape for 24, but it also for 25. So our concept really was to establish some certainty for a couple of years and then work with the commission that we have a piece of legislation on to come up with a long-term plan. To just sort of by comparison, and I really do appreciate the thought behind the amendment, but given the projections that we're looking at for revenues from the cannabis bill, this would generate about $360,000 in the first year. And as I said, we committed $35 million. Our commitment to this is really strong, to MEMSOF and to the whole system. So I would encourage us to go sort of the course with us over the next couple of years to figure out the best possible route and reject this amendment.
All right, thank you, Senator. On the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I stand and rise in support of the amendment. I do understand that our chairman's points and they're very evident in our budget. But I think also at the same time, looking at the different departments of our emergency services and being a part of public safety in my subcommittee, these things are really important. But adding more to that would never hurt. We see the emergency systems and shock trauma, the Maryland Fire and Rescue Institute, and the other parts of public safety, as we see, are important to Maryland. Every part of public safety in our schools and anything that we even just talk about are important. But these are really evident, how important these are, especially our shock trauma. And so I think it will be a greater benefit adding more to helping out our public servants that are there, that are working hard and helping them out also. So in all respect, I love this amendment, this legislation, Mr. President. I think benefiting these people and helping them out more is helping out our constituents.
So I hope we can vote for this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from District 4.
Thank you, Mr. President. I stand in support of this amendment. I just want to make sure that everyone understands this isn't just an amendment about going to fire rescue or those volunteer fire companies. This is going to help every one of us in one way or another. This legislation, this amendment, has the opportunity to affect any one of us at any given time, and in our families' most critical times, because it affects shock trauma, it affects the helicopter program, it affects the way that the trauma and EMS is allowed to respond to us and provide services. Because everybody thinks that the tag fees is enough to help sustain the trooper helicopter program. It's just not. It's not even cutting it. It's not making it. This is important. This is a 1% ask to support those who are providing the services to all of us in our most critical time. When there's been a vehicle crash, when there's been a shooting, when our loved ones are in duress, they need immediate care. This ensures that we have the tip of the spear and first responders and equipment to help save lives. And with that, I would rise in strong support for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Senator from the 37th District on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm on the committee. I only have a couple quick words to share and on the Senate Finance. So we've heard a lot about this legislation, and a lot of that comes from people who are very interested. They call them stakeholders. This amendment is not from stakeholders. This amendment is from the people. There's different discussions that go on, and I want to thank the author of the amendment, and I encourage everyone to think long and hard about this, because this amendment, the constitutional amendment to legalization, was overwhelming. And I think if this amendment were to be a constitutional amendment, I think the result in an election would also be overwhelming for the people. So I urge the body to think hard about the amendment. I urge a favorable vote.
All right, floor leader. Let's hear from the Senator from Montgomery County on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. My heart is with this amendment, and I think the gentleman, the senator from District 35, has great intentions. I'm going to be voting red on the amendment for two reasons. One is I don't think we should be making alterations to the budget on the Senate floor without some idea of the implications and ramifications. And second, the chair of the Budget and Taxation Committee made a really strong case that MEMSOF has already been addressed and is respected and understood as an important agency. So I think this amendment is not needed on this bill, and I'll be voting red. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, let's hear from the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. To address some of the opposition to the amendment. So, when I originally spoke, I said, this is basically serving as a placeholder. I know that this is not going to provide all the funding needed for this program, but I think it's important that we as a General Assembly make a statement that we're going to include this from the very beginning. So, I know that we don't know exactly what the income is going to be, and that's why this will have to be adjusted. But I think it's important from day one, as we pass this out, to have this as a line in this legislation. It's not as much about the dollar amount as it is where we think the General Assembly should be making a statement. So I appreciate the funding for emergency service. I've been able to work with other issues like that with the chair. He's been chair of Budget and Tax. He's been terrific to work with. But this isn't just about $300,000 or $1 million. This is about putting this in from day one, so we show as a General Assembly that this is a priority. This is one of the biggest bills we're going to pass, if not the biggest, probably this year. We need to make a clear, strong statement that emergency services are going to be in here in a line from day one. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 28 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Additional amendments to the bill or its title. Chair recognizes Senator from District 1 has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. to the students as we're waiting for the distribution to the Green Street students. This is the true government in action. Real debate, tough issues, lots of complex things. This is the Senate at its best, really trying to work through knotty issues. All right. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I have what I call an awesome and wonderful amendment that I believe will allow us to follow through our commitment to public education. As you all are aware, I am a father of 8. My bride is a public school teacher, and public education is important to my family, just as important to each and every one of Marylanders' families. This simple amendment would direct 50% of the cannabis tax revenue to education, not the general fund. Now, funding education has been a long part of the conversation about legalizing cannabis. And I was actually a little surprised that given this body's tendency for spending mandates, there wasn't one for public education in this particular bill. I am so thankful that the General Assembly's #1 priority is to fully fund education, and will have followed through with our commitment towards as we made the blueprint. Now, it does seem a little counterintuitive that we have not directed some of this large new revenue source towards our obligation to the blueprint and our public education, especially in light of the future financial uncertainty. Now, according to the most recent fiscal note available, by FY27, tax revenue for cannabis sales would generate nearly $80 million a year. Under this amendment, nearly $40 million a year could be directed towards the blueprint. This would go a long way to shore up our obligations, especially in FY27. It has been identified as when the blueprint will experience challenging funding opportunities, as we are all aware, based on the budget decisions that are still being finalized. Now, Mr. President, I will leave you with four words: happy wife, happy life. And therefore, Mr. President, I would urge to move this amendment, and I request a roll call. Pretty please.
All right, senators, move the amendment. Let's hear from the chair of Budget and Tax as the second.
Well, I am continue to be thrilled by the sentiment that's being put on the floor today, and appreciate the senators' thoughts on the matter and the idea of what we need to do to support the blueprint. First off, the Education Trust Fund, of course, does a couple things. So you'd be adding money for both debt service for our schools, and then also to the policy that's associated and the formulas that are associated with the blueprint. You're correct that approximately $40 million, and maybe even a little bit more under my calculations, would come out by 2027. But let me just remind the body once again, 40 million, which again is not nothing. It's good money. It's an important thought, but we have committed as of last year an additional 800 million, and we will be doing another 800 million this year. The reality is that we do have a plan. We've been very thoughtful about putting aside money, essentially in a sense to ensure that the long-term viability of our plan happens. And what I would suggest is that the body rejects this amendment. Continue, I would say, work with the committee and as a body to fulfill this vision. We're going to get there. We have a plan, and because of that, I'd ask you to reject this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the Minority Whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. The chairman of Budget and Tax has been really done great work with the budget this year, along with the whole committee. And it's interesting to be standing here supporting a mandate, because we've often talked about the need for flexibility, and I generally agree that that's the right principle. And our state is investing, our state's taxpayers are investing tremendous amount of money over the next 10 years into the blueprint. I think the reason I would argue in favor of this amendment, and we'll be supporting it, is a couple points. First of all, the sponsor of the amendment, one of his first points was part of how legalizing marijuana has been pitched, sold, not by anybody in this room necessarily, but by at large, the people who have advocated for it. One of the big things that's been talked about is we'd have money for all kinds of educational resources. I think in the gubernatorial campaign has talked about we can do pre-K because we're going to have legalized marijuana, among other things. And I think what we could do with this amendment is say, hey, you're right, it's, quote, only $30 or $40 million, or however much it ends up being. It's actually not going to be as much money as people think, which is why it's all the more important that we would make our top priority with the state, have it aimed towards the top priority in the state. I think it would keep us a little bit honest about what our priorities should be. I think it also, we're going to need a lot of money to deal with a lot of things with the blueprint that may not even be factored in right now with the way it is. It's going to change and evolve over the next several years by necessity. So I think this is a nice fail-safe to say we're going to take the money that comes from this that isn't going to some of the other things in the bill it's going to, and we're going to make it very clear that this money goes to these educational priorities. Hopefully we're going to educate children to not smoke marijuana because it's not good for you. I would urge the body to support the amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Additional amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from District 7 has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Mr. President.
Senator may explain the amendment. Senator from the 37th District, what purpose, Senator Rice?
Did you recognize me?
Yes.
Yeah. So the amendment, we've discussed the amendment. The amendment is not going to be offered. Apparently, the amendment is not for this.
Senator.
bill.
I'm sorry. Are you, sir, are you referring to a different amendment? We have the senator from the 7th District amendment to dispose of first.
I'm sorry. I got a mixed message.
Okay.
back
No
here.
worries. No worries. Senator from the 7th.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, proceed.
Colleagues, this amendment deals with the businesses that have opened up over the last few years dealing with CBD oil. On the federal level, dealing with hemp, the feds legalized it, and these companies have been able to open up, and they're selling topical products that you can put on, and there's some other stuff they sell. But these are established businesses that have opened up. People have invested their retirements in them. They're supporting their families. With the legislation we're about to pass, most of them are going to go out of business. They're going to be shut down because they're not going to be in compliance with what is now going to be state law. They're going to have till, I think it's July 1 to figure out how they're going to handle their business. All this is doing is giving them 1 year to figure out how to close their business, sell it, or do whatever they're going to do with it. It's just a 1 year extension, or gives them 1 year instead of 3 months, because they're eventually going to have to shut down. So I move the amendment.
All right. The senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this was a matter that the committee talked about quite a bit. There was a lot of discussion during our hearing in the committee on this subject. And what we did, the Senate Finance Committee actually adopted an amendment to the bill as it came over to us from the House. And we had a lot of struggle with this because basically these are, to a certain extent, unregulated intoxicating substances that are being sold. And so we put a provision in the bill that said that low-dose topical products, including, we also added tinctures to the bill, which has a low amount of tetrahydrocannabinol, or THC. Yeah. I practiced all night. So those low-dose products can continue to be sold. We also decided, though, that the non-regulated intoxicating substances, we just did not want to keep them operating. And so I believe in the bill we put a 6-month, we gave them 6 months, so to January. Oh, we did not give them 6 months. My apologies. I know that was something that we discussed. We determined the House bill came over with no continuation of the intoxicating unregulated substances, and the committee supported that. We did not want those products to continue to be on the market. We thought that there would be confusion for enforcement, and we did not want our citizens to be confused about what they were purchasing and have that confused with the regulated and tested and tracked substances that will be sold through our legal market. So we would ask that you resist this amendment and know that those low THC products like gels and lotions and things would still be available to those consumers.
All right. Are there any senators who wish to speak who have not yet spoken? If not, let's hear from the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, first of all, there was an amendment offered in the committee which was more broad. This really narrows it down. If you look at it, they have to have already been open by October 1, so it's nobody who was just quickly opened. But the big thing is number 3, at least 90% of the revenue is attributed to the sale of hemp-derived products. Because there are gas stations and stuff that sell that. We're not trying to deal with that. We're trying to deal with these businesses that have opened up, that this is their number 1 product they sell. And I understand, I've heard about this hallucinogenic and all that on this product. What has been explained to me, because I've had many people in my office talking to me, explaining is this stuff is, it's like near beer. You have to consume so much of it to get a high that it's almost impossible to get there. But again, these are businesses that have opened up legally. They've done everything they needed to do. They're going to have to shut down. Is 3 months enough time? No. I don't know if any of you ever sold a business, but it's not something you can do in 3 months. It's not like walking down Main Street buying a shirt where it's a quick transaction. These people have leases that they've signed that they're now going to have to work with their landlords on how do they get out of the lease. They've got product and inventory they have to deal with. They have employees. So it's a long time. It takes months to shutter a business properly without these people having to basically face bankruptcy. That's all we're doing is trying to give them time. As the chairwoman said, the committee looked at 6 months. She thought they did it, but turns out they didn't. So they don't have any time. So we're just trying to be friendly to the business world to say, hey, we know you guys open these businesses. You're going to have to shut down. We're giving you 12 months to do it. That's all I'm asking for is let's be friendly to the business world and say, hey, we understand you're shutting down, but we're going to work with you. Mr. President, again, I move the amendment.
All right. On the amendment, let's hear from Senator from District 6.
And I rise in support of the amendment because if you think about in our area in the state of Maryland, most of these are small businesses. They're not big businesses. They're very small. And so I believe in our small business, our mom and pop shops that are out there that are trying to make a living. And so I think this is just a good thing and good favor for us to have an opportunity to help our mom and pop shops, our small businesses that are throughout the whole state of Maryland. And it's important to know that all of us have those in our area. And I'd like to have a roll call, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator. Further discussion on the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd District has an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Here we go. This is amendment 223.
We'll get a load into the system.
Okay, fine.
Unless there's multiple.
That's great.
Okay. Well, maybe we'll make sure it's the right one first.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go, Daddy. You're good.
All right. Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. The body may recall my conversation yesterday with the floor leader on this bill, and I was focusing on the dangers of oversupply. As you may recall, there are 3 numbers that are significant. The study that was provided to the committee recommended that we have 1.7 million square feet of canopy. That's 1.7. The bill provides for up to 22.5 million square feet of canopy. In Massachusetts, which is has a little bigger population than ours, where they currently have 3.2 million square feet of canopy, they're in big trouble. I won't read everything that I read yesterday, but there's a recent meeting of the Massachusetts Cannabis Control Commission in which they acknowledged that the price of cannabis, because of oversupply, had already fallen 50%, and licensed cultivators were failing in Massachusetts. We don't want that to happen here in Maryland. Now, the response I got yesterday was, well, things will take care of themselves, and the people who regulate the cannabis may not provide authorization for up to 22.5 million square feet of canopy, and the cultivators might not ask for 22.5 million square feet of canopy. So what this amendment does is requires the Alcohol, Tobacco, and Cannabis Commission to study whether the current maximum of 300,000 square feet of canopy per grower creates any barriers to the effective functioning of the cannabis industry in the state, and report back to us by the end of this year as to what their findings and recommendations are. So it will give us an updated report as of the end of the year before next year's session as to where we stand, if we in fact are in danger of having an oversupply or not. I recommend a favorable vote on the amendment and ask for a recorded vote.
All right, the senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank the gentleman for sharing the amendment with me. I would ask the body to resist this amendment. If you look at the reprint of the bill, this study is already asked for by the committee of the Cannabis Administration. So we do not need this amendment. We will have this data collected and we will get this information. So thank the gentleman for raising the issue, but this language is duplicative to what's already in the bill, so I would ask us to reject the amendment.
All right. Let's see, are there any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you. I guess I got one question for the floor leader. Apparently, the commission or the committee is going to receive additional information. Will that be before the next legislative session, as this amendment would require?
On or before January 1st of each year, they will be studying and reporting on this information.
Okay. And it does deal with the canopy issue.
It does deal with the canopy issue.
All right, great. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The noes have it. Additional amendment?
I believe I asked for a recorded vote.
Did not. Okay. Apologies. Yeah, it's all right. If I missed it, I missed it. Let's do it the right way. The clerk will call the roll. Oh, do we have to pull it back up? I don't know if we'll have a substantially different result, but do it the right way.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. 35 votes in the negative. Senator amendment fails. Chair recognizes the senator from the 42nd as an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will assure everyone this is my last.
All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. This one deals with the fact that currently sellers of medical marijuana, some of them deliver the product to their customers. The customers tend to be elderly, and they're not able to travel to the locations of the dispensaries, and so the dispensaries deliver the product to their customers. The current bill requires those deliveries to end as of December 31st this year. This amendment merely permits the deliveries to continue an extra 6 months until July 1st of next year. And frankly, the reason for the amendment is to see how things are working out and perhaps to approach the committee, the Finance Committee next year and ask for a modification of the bill, or at that point the law, in order to deal with the question of deliveries to customers. So this bill asks for a 6-month extension. I ask for a favorable vote and also ask for a roll call vote. Thank you.
All right, Senator has moved the amendment and asked for a roll call vote. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, the bill, first let me just be clear, I'm going to ask that we resist this amendment. The bill that came over to Senate Finance actually ended the delivery July 1 of this year. Senate Finance gave a 6-month extension. This is where the 6 months came from that I was thinking of. And we allowed those deliveries to happen until the end of the year. Reason being, in January of 2024, that's when the micro licenses are available for delivery. And so we did not want those to overlap, and therefore I ask you that to reject this amendment. The committee extended those licenses by 6 months. So, Mr. President, I ask that we not support the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 32 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Additional amendments. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County has an amendment. Pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
I need the top. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to start.
Senator, just give us one quick moment to make sure we get on the board, just so that the proceedings are all correct, and for perpetuity, we know the result. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking our colleagues who have been working on this bill and on this issue, not just this session, but for years. My colleague from District 15, the chair of the Finance Committee, all the members, and all of the staff and legal counsel. It's an important policy issue, and we were guided by the voters last year. The piece that I believe is missing in this bill is about public safety. It has been shown statistically, factually, in every single state that after legalization, that there is an increase in collisions, in serious injury, and in fatalities. Now, working with the good senator from District 42, last year we had a floor amendment on the cannabis bill talking about driving under the influence of drugs. And there is better technology, and there are oral swabs that can be used to discern whether there are drugs, whether there is an impairment in a driver that threatens their own health and safety and those of others on the road. NHTSA, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, has done studies. There have been a lot of studies, and in every single state, after legalization, there is a bump up in impairment, in collisions, and in serious injury and death. And I appreciate the senator from District 35 and his focus on public safety with his amendment, but this amendment is actually much simpler and does nothing with dollars. I wouldn't presume to start messing with that aspect of it, at least in this amendment. There are two entities, sorry, Madam Chair, there are two entities, in my opinion, that are missing from the commission that's going to be overseeing our implementation. And one is the state police. We don't have a drug recognition expert. And second, we don't have someone from the State Highway Administration. And I think that those two presences are going to help keep Marylanders safe as we gauge the impact of this new law, which will pass, which will be implemented. So in addition to adding 2 people to the commission, this amendment would also require 5 years of reports so that we can monitor and have access to data to see the safety impact of this, and then as a General Assembly consider whether there should be action taken in the future. So I hope this common sense amendment would be received warmly by the chair, and I move the amendment. Thank you.
All right, the senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And again, colleagues, I'm going to ask that we resist this amendment. There are two provisions listed in the amendment, and I'll speak to each of them. The first was about a study and collecting data so that we get information about what is happening as it pertains to the implementation of adult use cannabis in Maryland. The bill that passed out of this chamber last year already anticipated those needs and asked for a study. The baseline study actually just came out about a month ago. The study is scheduled to regularly be released in statute and has the kinds of data that the senator mentioned in her amendment. So this language is not necessary. As it pertains to the second part of the amendment, I just want to remind the body of the current membership, which was modified in Senate Finance. The member of the commission includes someone from public health. It does include a law enforcement representative. We have someone knowledgeable in alcoholic beverage, cannabis research and policy, tobacco policy, and 2 members of the public. And so we already have law enforcement representation on the commission, and therefore I ask that we resist this amendment.
All right. On the amendment, let's hear from the senator from the 35th District who has not yet spoken on the amendment.
Yes, Mr. President, thank you for offering the amendment. I'd like to say, my heart is with this amendment, like yours was on a previous one, but actually I also think it's a good idea, so I will be voting in favor. I appreciate the amendment.
All right. Senator from Frederick County. And before, I just want to appreciate the Green Street folks. Best of luck. Enjoy your time in Annapolis today. So hopefully you got to see us working well on a tough issue. Yes, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise in support of this amendment. I think this is a very reasonable request. It's important to have appropriate stakeholders involved in this process. Having a drug recognition expert involved in this is, you have different tiers of law enforcement like we all have in different professions. We have different tiers of responsibility. Having someone that has that focused effort, that knowledge is important to recognize, the movement that as we navigate this forward. Also having the state police, because of the number of that they head the program for all of the state with the DUIs as well as impaired by alcohol and or drugs, is important. These stakeholders are important. I think this is a very reasonable request, and with that I would urge and ask for a roll call vote on this. I just think it's that important, Mr. President. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote, explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 30 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Any further amendments to the bill or title? Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County has an amendment. The pages will collect and distribute the senator's amendment. All right, Senator, may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think most of the time the Senate does amazing work and gets it right, and sometimes we need to coach the House. On one aspect of this bill, I think the House got it right. The committee, the Finance Committee, in all its insights and genius, did a great job with this bill, but one thing that they did was change the distribution and the recipient of cannabis funding tax revenue from jurisdictions to counties. And I'm standing today on behalf of Maryland's municipalities. There is an impact when a dispensary is open. And if it is located within municipal boundaries, the municipality would need to bear that burden, whether that's signage, redoing zoning, whether that's blight, whether it's loitering, whether it's noise, whether it is law enforcement that's needed. So I believe that the number is 90 of our 157 cities and towns have their own police forces that will be increased, that will, be faced with increased enforcement requirements. The others mostly have a contract with law enforcement or security companies. I want to use the example, and our colleague from District 21 will will be aware that there will surely be dispensaries, one or more, that are installed in College Park. College Park does not have its own municipal police force, but they contract. And there will be problems. There will be noise and blight and litter and loitering and possibly zoning text amendments that are needed, and yet they get zero of the revenues. So all of the costs and none of the fiscal benefits. I hope that this body will stand for fairness. If something is in a county outside of municipal lines, the county should definitely be getting the revenues. If it's within municipal boundaries, I think we need to honor and support our municipalities, and I urge a favorable reaction to this amendment. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, I stand again asking you to resist this amendment, but I do want to offer some explanation, and I want to thank the sponsor for bringing this, and all of you that brought your amendments to us before this floor session today, so that we would have a chance to respond appropriately to the concerns you've raised. The issues raised in this amendment are issues that were discussed by the committee, and as the sponsor of the amendment stated, this was a challenge for the committee and a difference with the House. What we know is that all municipalities are not equal. We know that some have Board of Public Works, some have law enforcement, some don't. Some are very, very large with a robust setup and fully staffed, and some are very, very, very small. And so the committee, in our consideration of the distribution of funds between counties and municipalities, thought about how best to make sure that the resources got to those that were providing the services around standing up this new industry. We also thought about the fact that medicinal cannabis dispensaries exist across the state and nobody's getting any funds from there. But we wanted to be respectful of the fact that all things are not equal, all municipalities and all counties are not equal. It was our hope and was our intention that counties work with municipalities who are impacted by the presence of these adult use facilities in their jurisdictions through MOU or some other form of negotiation. I would ask, because we have a difference with the House on this matter, and we've received, I will tell you, I've gotten some emails from folks on this matter, whether you represent a municipality, and a lot of us do, and from MML. All of those recommendations look a little bit different, and so we would like time to look at these proposals with our colleagues in the House, Mr. President, and therefore I would ask that we resist this amendment, understanding and agreeing that this area may need some future work.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes Senator from Anne Arundel and Prince George's.
Thank you very much. In this case, Prince George's, where my two municipalities are, College Park and the city of Laurel. I want to thank the sponsor of the amendment for raising the issue and pressing the issue. It is a very important issue. And I also want to thank the chairwoman for working with all of us to get to a resolution of this when we go to conference. So we're going to get this fixed. We need to get it fixed. It's important. It's important to a lot of us. We had a discussion of it yesterday in the Prince George's Senate delegation because we've got more municipalities than anybody else, and our Prince George's colleagues feel very strongly about this. And so I'm confident this is going to get worked out. And with that, I am going to vote against the amendment, but for the concept, and look forward to the conference solving this problem. Thank you, Mr. President.
On the amendment, any further discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 36th District.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm going to rise in opposition of the amendment, but I think it's important that we all really recognize how much money we're talking about here. So if we look at the fiscal note projects the first year gross sales of cannabis to be between $350 million and $600 million. Senate Finance brought the sales tax up to 9%. So at $350 million at 9%, that's $31 million in general tax revenue that can come to us. 50% is coming off the top. We also increased the local share to 5%. 5% is $1.5 million. If you divided that equally amongst all 24 counties, and that's not the way that the bill will do it, does allocate based on sales, but if you did it equally, $65,000. That's what we're arguing about right now. $65,000 is going to go to each county if it was allocated equally. If the sales were the high end at $600 million, again, based on 9%, based on 5% going to the municipality or going to the counties, $112,000. So we're not talking about an awful lot of money here when we're mentioning what the counties are going to get as a result of this. So I think there's a number of things that probably need to be discussed further as we continue with this legislation. But I just want people to bear in mind, those are the initial estimates. Some say that we could get to $1 billion annually in sales, and obviously that would go up a little bit more. But these numbers are not that significant. And with that, Mr. President, I'm going to vote against this.
All right, thank you, Senator. Any further discussion on the amendment? All right, if not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the Finance Chair for her open-mindedness and awareness that this is an issue. And one thing I just wanted to read to the body, which was the language on page 80, which says that a county shall consider distributing the allocation received under this item to a municipality located in the county, blah, blah, blah. Shall consider? Yep, thought about it. Sorry, you're out of luck. I think, so I just want to encourage our colleagues that as they're thinking about language, that when they're working on something and finding a middle ground, that we try to come up with something stronger than shall consider as well. So thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right. Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Prince George's.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I appreciate so much everyone and all the work we put into this. But I'm going to rise in support of this amendment. The reason being, I represent Forest Heights. They asked me to do it. I am their representative. Forest Heights is unique in that it is located right there on the border of National Harbor. There was a lot of money promised to them. There's a lot of impact that was costly to them, and they never got it. And while it may be a little bit, for a municipality, every little bit helps. And so I just think that when you, and as many of you with a municipality in your district, or many of them, you often hear about the impact and the financial impact of decisions that the county will make, and that those decisions have a financial impact on that municipality, be it zoning, emergency services, et cetera. And so I think to move this toward everything that I can get for a municipality, and not to say they shall consider it. But I don't think, if it's since it's such a minute amount, as others have said, then I don't think it would be an undue burden on the county to share that with the municipalities. Thank you.
All right. On the amendment, yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from Carroll County.
Mr. President, since we're talking about shall consider, this is a discussion that we had, and the chair is absolutely right. Not every county and not every municipality is created equal. And now I'm going to probably incur a little wrath from my municipalities, but that's okay, because in some of our municipalities, there's a police force. They may have their own health set up. But in a lot of municipalities in the state, they depend on a resident trooper program, or they depend on the county sheriff's department. The county health departments deal with it. So we have shall consider because it says you have to have the conversation. But to be so prescriptive when you have this wide variety of entities is, we're trying to strike a balance in the committee. To be honest, I wish there was a way to maybe figure out how to segment it, and maybe there can be in the conference, but I'm going to stick with where we settled on it in committee. I did not vote for the final bill, but on this issue we tried to work as collaborative as we could. There were efforts, I think, to just make it go all to the counties, and we didn't think that was the right approach either. So this was the balance, and so I'm going to support. I'm going to resist this amendment, Mr. President, and support the committee.
All right. On the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. The noes have it. The amendment is rejected. The perennial battle of county versus municipality. Additional amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the minority leader has an amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Right there. Thank you.
All right, pages will distribute the amendment. All right, Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This amendment is a little bit fitting after the last conversation. If we are looking for a robust cannabis market because we want to split up the tax revenue, one of the integral parts of that is a dispensary system that can get up and operate quickly. And one of the things that we have done in Senate Finance is we've looked at the dispensary conversion fees. So the processors, growers, and dispensaries will all have a conversion fee from medical cannabis to recreational cannabis, and each will pay a fee in order to make that conversion. The dispensary has a different fee structure, but it's bracketed. So for instance, if you have $1 million gross revenue or less, you'll pay a $100,000 conversion fee. 1 million to 5 million, a $250,000 conversion fee. 5 million to 10 million, a $500,000 conversion fee, and so on to if you are more than $200 million, you'll pay a $2 million conversion fees. And again, this is a separate set for the growers and processors, are even more expensive than that. Under this bracketed format that came over from the House, we tried to reduce the fees some for the dispensaries by putting in an amendment that made it 10% of gross revenues. So it was, instead of the bracketed format, it was a simple 10%. But what that ended up doing is it took some of the ones that were close to the borders of the bracket, and they ended up having to pay more than what was the original structure. So this amendment simply takes the Senate Finance amendment, and instead of it being 10%, drops it down to 5%. And again, this is something that would help the dispensaries get up and running quick, make that conversion. They're already paying an annual license fee. This is on top of that. We've done some work to spread that fee and the payment of that out a little bit. But those fees, those annual fees, are actually paid upon the anniversary of when they open. So they're not all January 1st, for instance. So some of them have actually paid that fee already and will have to continue to do that. So I think this is just in place to allow the dispensaries to get a little bit more in line with some of the fees that were originally sent over. I think we did the right thing in looking at it from a percentage on gross revenue rather than the bracketed, but I think we were a little bit too high with 10%. And I would ask that the body consider dropping that down to 5%.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'm going to ask the body to resist this amendment. This was an area where the committee spent a great deal of time and put in a lot of work with sensitivity to the businesses that are operating already in the state, with an understanding of the fact that they have been operating and will, in fact, as a now converted licensee, stand to raise additional revenue because they have a new and expanded business and a new market for their business. Again, we hear the concerns of those that are in the industry as it pertains to the fees, and we did, as the senator mentioned, put for provisions in place so that the fees could be paid over an 18-month basis versus having them pay one lump sum. We also asked that, or we also put provisions in the bill that said that they would receive a credit to their renewal fee while they're paying their installments. So we did consider the fees and ultimately kept the floor, the floor at $100,000, and we actually reduced some of the fees, the higher end of the fees, with consideration for the cost to those that are converting. But I would ask the body to resist the amendment.
All right. Any further discussion on the amendment? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. No. The senator's amendment does not make it through. Are there further amendments to the bill or its title? Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City has an amendment. Pages will please collect and distribute the senator's amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the body, I absolutely respect the committee process and the very, very well done comprehensive product that has reached this floor. But it is a moral imperative that we take this opportunity in creating a new industry to do everything we can to not widen the caste system in Maryland. It's been said for, I guess, the entire time that I've been in this body that data has shown that Maryland is the most carceral state in all states, in all the country, for black men. Maryland still incarcerates more black men than any other state in the country, and a large reason for that is the so-called war on drugs that resulted in discriminatory enforcement. Marijuana was a very big catalyst for driving that disparity. And so I believe that whether your priority is public safety, whether your priority is tax revenues, which will only increase if you decrease the black market, one of the ways that you decrease the black market or illicit market, if that's really a goal, is to ensure that there is a pathway for transition for those people that are criminalized to transition into a legal market, an opportunity to participate. That increases public safety. That increases our tax revenues. But what it really does is it gives us an opportunity to right some of the wrongs of the past, but through policy. And I believe that if we go down this road and we walk out of here and this goes legal July 1, 2023, and on July 2, 2023, you still have anywhere in the state of Maryland primarily poor black and brown people that will still be arrested, prosecuted, and receive criminal penalties for possession with intent to distribute the very same activity that we are now licensing multimillionaires to become billionaires in our state for. And so all this amendment does is, the first part would require the Office of Social Equity to develop a program that provides education, training, and opportunities to enable individuals to participate in the industry, including but not limited to a social equity license, and to work in the industry at all levels. There are multiple levels. It's not limiting anything, but the only way to get people from the criminal roles to the tax revenue roles is to give them an opportunity. And that should be, we should be intentional about that. The second part of the amendment specifically speaks to the persons that we must give a pathway for. An individual convicted of possession with intent to distribute within the previous 3 years prior to July 1, 2023, or an individual arrested for possession with intent to distribute on or after July 1, 2023, but before July 1, 2026, shall be afforded the opportunity to be diverted from the criminal system and allowed an opportunity to participate in the legal system. It's just an opportunity. It's not for life. It's not for a repeat offender. It's just a common sense bill or amendment that I believe makes Maryland a better state and helps us protect Maryland's future. Now, I understand that we have funding coming to communities for social equity, and that's really important. But it's not enough alone. It's merely a palliative for people that already have a chance to succeed in life, to do better. But there are people that are on the bottom rung of society. They have had no economic engine in their communities for their entire lives, for generations, other than the illegal drug trade. And there is no way in the world, unless we are intentional about giving them an opportunity to participate in this new industry, they will be able to figure that out. And so I would ask for you to vote favorable on my amendment. Thank you.
All right, Senator moves the amendment. Let's hear it from the floor leader.
Yeesh. Colleagues, first let me thank the sponsor for sharing the amendment with me and to say that I share her heart and what the amendment seeks to do. The challenge is the Office of Social Equity is set up to distribute licenses, and they're not set up to administer programs. And that's why in our earlier exchange, I was trying to indicate that the opportunity that we have is to have those folks that are used to delivering services in communities receive funding from the Community Reinvestment and Repair Fund to do exactly what you've called for in the amendment. As it pertains to the diversion of those who've been convicted with possession, I would ask if JPR might not have a better vehicle through which something like this might be handled, because this bill is a regulatory bill that sets up licenses. And if this proposal came through a vehicle that deals with those issues, I will stand up, I'll probably ask to co-sponsor it. But I don't want to muddy the people that are going to be on the Office of Social Equity are not equipped to incorporate the kind of program that you've suggested. I think there's probably a better place to do this, and I don't know if the chair of JPR would assist. Give me an assist here.
All right, Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Always happy to oblige, Madam Chair. This will help the medicine go down. Look, the Senator brings up a fantastic point, and I couldn't agree more. And we do have a vehicle. We've been talking about this in JPR. The Senator brought the same idea up to me, and I think it's a very compelling, very good idea. And you have my commitment that we are going to work in earnest, and you'll have the opportunity to sponsor that effort.
All right, Chair recognizes the Senator from District 44.
Thank you very much. If I might ask the floor leader a question about the amendment.
Will the floor leader yield?
Sure.
Senator may proceed.
Just for clarity's sake, are the people that the good sponsor of the amendment that she's attempting to bring into the fold, does this current bill prohibit them from being?
No, as a matter of fact, those who are currently operating can work with others, and the Office of Social Equity does distribute a partnership grant that encourages businesses to partner with social equity applicants. There's also in the bill an incubator program that will be run by the state that will allow people to get training to participate in this industry. But I think the Senator's amendment is a little broader in that she's trying to meet a specific need for a specific population. The bill takes care of in a couple of ways, but also can be taken care of, the more explicit piece about the possession can be taken care of, as the chair of JPR just stated.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the amendment say aye. Opposed, nay. It's a close one, close one. The Senator's amendment fails, although I think we'll see this issue coming back. I think we have the opportunity to take this one up. All right. Other amendments to the bill or its title? Other amendments? Yes, Chair recognizes the Senator from the 38th District.
Thank you, Mr. President.
The Senator has
I have an amendment.
Pages will collect and distribute the Senator's amendment. The Senator may explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. President. I put a lot of thought into presenting this, and I wanted to share the reason that I'm offering this amendment. And I'm hoping that it will be accepted as a friendly public safety amendment as a way to allow our municipalities and counties to take the necessary steps to protect their and our constituents and our visitors from the effects of smoking cannabis in a public place. On a personal note, many of you know that I live in Ocean City. I'm right downtown. I'm on that boardwalk on a regular basis. I also have I've been a tour guide on the boardwalk where I've taken groups of visitors, families on the tour of the boards. And I can tell you that the smell of marijuana already is out there, and I'll tell you that it will only increase with the legalization of marijuana. And Ocean City already has a ban on smoking on the boardwalk, the beach, city parks, and areas that are close to bus shelters. And in Ocean City, they have the ability to fine up to $500 in an effort to protect those public places. When I was on the phone this morning with a couple of town managers about this issue of public smoking of cannabis and the effects in our municipalities and our public places, the need for this amendment became more apparent, not only with the upcoming legalization of recreational marijuana, but also with the passage of HB 1071, which cleared the House and is now before the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee. And this bill actually takes the fines for smoking cannabis in a public place, and it reduces the fines from $250 for a first offense down to $50. And then it takes the fine for a second offense, the $500, down to $150. And I just have to tell you that when we move forward with legislation like this, major legislation that's affecting our state, our constituents, we really need to think about all the consequences. And this issue of smoking, and I've been working this issue since I was delegate back in 2015, the smoking across the board, whether it's cigarettes, vaping, and now the cannabis. And when you're out there and you're walking the boardwalk or you're in those public places, and there's that smell of marijuana, and you've got children around, it is not good. It's not inducive for people wanting to get out there and spend time. So our visitors, our residents, our constituents need to know we're doing everything we can to give them the tools to put these prohibitions of smoking cannabis in public and to know that there are real consequences. I've talked to some of you about this because there's been leaders on this issue. The senator from Montgomery County, the senator from Hartford County, and others that I know have been working on this issue and understand this. And I know talking to some of you individually, you realize that it's a reality that this is going to become more of an issue, smoking in public, once you have the legalization of recreational marijuana. So my hope is that this would be, again, seen as a friendly amendment, just reinforcing that our local political subdivisions can go above and have stricter regulations in place because they know what they need to do in their own municipalities and counties. So I ask for your support, and I hope that this would be accepted as a favorable amendment.
All right. The senator has moved the amendment. Let's hear from the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I once again ask that we resist this amendment. The amendment reads that we would establish regulations more strict than state regulations relating to the smoking of cannabis in a public place. And I just want to remind the body, in last year's bill, we passed provisions that prohibit the smoking of cannabis in public with civil fines of $200 for a first offense and $500 for a second offense. So this amendment speaks to regulations in a matter that is already in state law. So I would ask that we resist the amendment.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from District 7.
Thank you, Mr. President. Will the floor leader yield real quick?
Will the floor leader yield?
Thank you.
Senator may proceed.
So those penalties, are they staying at that level, 200 and 500?
This bill does not change any penalties.
So they stay at that level. Okay.
Bill does not change any penalties, sets up a framework.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. President, on the amendment.
On the amendment, Senator may proceed.
I support this, and it's real simple. Is the senator behind me spoke earlier about secondhand smoke. It really is an issue for those of us that have to go through urinalysis on a regular basis because of our jobs. If you're in the military, you get tested randomly. If you're a CDL driver, you get tested. If you're a pilot, you get tested. And I got to tell you, there's places where I've been where I'll smell it, and I literally hold my breath and walk faster to get away from it because I don't want to inhale it. And people are like, no, that doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way. There's a Johns Hopkins study that actually acknowledges it, that says, yes, in extreme cases, such as being in a closed car or in an unventilated room or in areas where you have dense smoke being blown off a balcony in Ocean City on the boardwalk, and you're constantly inhaling it, yes, you can get a contact high. And yes, it will show up in your analysis. And I'm telling you, you pop positive, your career's done. It is tough to get it back. You know, I sit next to somebody in committee that she's told me a story when she was in Colorado. And she had it. She couldn't even make it back to her hotel room. She had to get an Uber. So it's a legit issue. It's serious. I know people think it's funny. It's a joke. But, I've been here for many years, and I remember when we had debates on banning smoking publicly in restaurants and some of the arguments there. But I'm telling you, this is going to affect people's lives. Especially when you're walking with your kids, you can smell it. I've been to Colorado and other places where I'll smell it. It's only going to get worse around here as we make this stuff legal. And all we're trying to say is certain areas, hey, give the locals the authority to say, clamp down a little tighter, because there's more people that conjugate in that area, and it's not fair to the families and those. That's why I'll be supporting the amendment.
All right, on the amendment, Chair recognizes the senator from the 37th District on the amendment.
I want to thank the author of the amendment. The bill lays out permissible uses. It sets standards for well, not really so much for use, but there are standards in law. Putting this forward, not taking this amendment, the General Assembly, the state, is assuming every complaint that's going to come for the next decade or 2 decades. Giving the authority to locals will only prevent that from happening, because you know what's going to happen in the next few years. The mayors, the counties, they're going to come back and they're going to have a constituent issue where it's the Hatfield and McCoys, and it'll never get resolved. And by not taking this amendment, we're going to make that our problem. Why would it be in the state's interest to want to adopt all those issues? Let the locals do what the locals do, which is what this amendment would do. I urge a favorable vote.
All right. On the amendment, Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't know that I could say anything better than what's already been said. I just want to add one sort of make it real story. This past weekend, my family and I went to see the cherry blossoms in D.C., and we actually parked a good distance away and had to walk a long way. It was quite a traffic jam around the cherry blossoms. It was a sea of humanity from all over the place. But Washington, D.C. has had much more liberalized marijuana laws for a long time. And I will tell you, my children wondered if it was a skunk. Every 50 to 100 feet, you would smell it again and again and again. And I think we need to think long and hard about the policy we set forth. And I agree with what the senator from the Middle Shore said. Why are we going to put ourselves in the position of being the regulatory standard? We should be the floor, and then let the towns or the counties set their regulations based on what they have in their communities. The boardwalk is different, obviously, than downtown Washington, D.C. It's different than a rural town somewhere in the middle of Carroll County. Okay, so I think this is a good amendment, and I would urge the body to adopt it. It doesn't mess with the bill. It doesn't endanger anything else in the bill. It's a good amendment, Mr. President. So my vote will be yes.
All right. On the amendment, further discussion. Chair recognizes the senator from Montgomery County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wonder if the chair would yield
the floor leader
for a question. The floor leader.
Senator may proceed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm sympathetic to the problem, and I agree that it's going to be a problem. I'm reading the bill, and I was looking to see where this amendment would fit in. And I heard what you said about penalties that already exist that we passed last year. What I'm looking at on page 48, 49, where this amendment would fit in, is the verbiage on lines 28 through 30 that says a political subdivision may establish reasonable zoning requirements for cannabis businesses. I'm wondering whether you think that this amendment would therefore be duplicative, since reasonable zoning restrictions could indicate that there could be significant limits so that people aren't walking past with folks with a strong smell and stuff in that area.
So you've stepped a little bit outside of my expertise, because we on Senate Finance don't really deal with zoning issues, so I wouldn't be able to answer that. I don't know. I don't know that the language is duplicative. I just don't know that it's apples and oranges, but I just think it's probably better suited in another committee that deals with criminal and civil penalties. So I don't know if this is the appropriate place in the bill or if this is duplicative.
Okay, I'm not a zoning expert either. I just thought that maybe the senator's concern was already addressed in the bill. That's what I was wondering.
I don't think it's the same thing. I don't think it's the same thing, but I don't know.
All right, on the amendment, further discussion. Any senators who have not yet spoken who wish to speak? If not, Chair recognizes the maker of the amendment.
Thank you. And I also just want to thank my colleagues. I've talked to several of you about this, and I think you know that this is a genuine public safety issue affecting our families across the state of Maryland, not just in Ocean City and everywhere. So I urge you to support it. Again, it's just giving our local jurisdictions another tool to protect their constituents, our constituents, and ask for a recorded vote.
All right, on the amendment, any further discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. With 26 votes in the negative, the senator's amendment fails. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 516 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, senators, we're going to go through and try and get some of these Senate bills moving along. So we're going to kind of bounce around the committees to get the Senate bills. This is going to start with Finance. No rest for the weary. Report number 29. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 582, Senator Augustine, Behavioral Health Care, Treatment and Access Behavioral Health Model for Marylanders, favorable with 4 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 582, as amended, is identical to House Bill 1148. The bill establishes a Commission on Behavioral Health Care Treatment and Access, creates a Behavioral Health Care Coordination Value-Based Purchasing Pilot Program, extends for 2 years provisions relating to telehealth services, and requires the Department of Health to apply for certain federal planning grant funds in fiscal 2025 and for inclusion in a certified community behavioral health clinic demonstration program for fiscal 2026. Amendment 1 makes technical changes. Amendment 2 adds members to the commission, expands the duties of the commission, and clarifies that recommendations made by the commission must be consistent with the commission's purpose. Amendment 3 repeals the requirement that MDH submit a state plan amendment to establish certified community behavioral health clinics. Amendment 4 requires the Maryland Healthcare Commission to conduct a certain study regarding the delivery of healthcare services through telehealth and requires MDH to apply for certain federal planning grant funds and for inclusion in a certified community behavioral health clinic demonstration program. Components of this bill align with Senate Bills 362, 534, and 581, all of which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection with the committee amendments? Without objection, the committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 582 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 960, Senator Kelly, State Board of Nursing, Sunset Extension, Licensure Exceptions, and Board Operations and Membership, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to give a little background on the State Board of Nursing, Sunset Extension, Licensure Exceptions, and Board Operations Membership. This bill passed unanimously in the House, but there are 282,000 regular professions that are licensed by the Board of Nursing. It's 5 times the next largest board. 35% of the positions are vacant, and after the cyber attack, they've not really fully recovered. So Senate Bill 960, which by the way has had the same sponsor in the House as it has in the Senate. I think that might be something historical. But Senate Bill 960 is amended identical to the House bill. It's an emergency bill that extends the termination date for the State Board of Nursing by 2 years to July 1, 2025 through June 30, 2025. The Secretary of Health has the authority over the infrastructure operations of the board, for which the board's special funds may not be used. The board terminates the terms of the board members in office on the date of the bill and takes effect. The bill requires the board to hire an external consultant to conduct an independent evaluation of the board to develop an action plan. The bill also alters the exceptions to registered nurse and licensed practical nurse licensure requirements and expands the required contents of the board's annual report. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 clarifies that the exception to licensure applies to a person who has taken and failed an examination one time within the 120-day period immediately following rather than preceding submission of an application, and specifies that infrastructure operations controlled by the Secretary of Health do not include policy or regulatory decisions. Amendment 3 requires that the executive director designated by the Secretary of Health be a registered nurse, removes language that would have repealed the requirement that the executive director be a registered nurse after authority is returned to the board from the Secretary of Health, and instead requires the independent evaluation of the board to include an evaluation of the executive director qualifications, and third, requires the external consultant hired by the board to be approved by the Secretary of Health, and finally, 4, alters the timing for terminating the terms of the existing board members. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor Leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objection with the amendments? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 960 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. All right, let's go to, sticking with finance. Report number 31. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 8, Senator Augustine, Mental Health Treatment Plans for Individuals and Facilities Requirements, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 8 codifies existing regulatory requirements related to the development, review, and reassessment of a patient's plan of treatment. The bill also establishes new requirements relating to a patient's plan of treatment, including an opportunity to involve family members or other individuals, and a process to request that a healthcare facility review and reassess the plan. Amendment 1 makes technical changes. Amendment 2 requires facilities to provide a schedule of team meetings where a plan of treatment is discussed and establish a process for the authorized individuals to participate in treatment team meetings when an individual consents to the inclusion of family members to participate in the development of a treatment plan. Provides for the circumstances when a treating provider may withhold information on a treatment plan from a family member, alters the process to be followed by a facility when communicating the results of a review and reassessment of a treatment plan, strikes an Office of Administrative Hearings review from the bill, and instead requires facilities to provide referral information for the resident grievance system under certain circumstances, authorizes certain individuals to appeal reconsiderations to the Department of Health's Healthcare System's Chief Medical Officer, and requires the department to report on the resident grievance system. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Senator, is this for involuntarily or voluntary and involuntary commitment?
Both, Mr.
Okay.
President.
Great. All right, on the 2 amendments, any discussion? If not, all in favor, or excuse me, any objections to the amendments? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 8 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 399, Senator M. Washington, Health Occupations, Environmental Health Specialist Revisions, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District as the floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Environmental health specialists, they principally work in our county health departments throughout Maryland. I know in Charles County they do various things, including inspection of septic systems to make sure they are constructed properly and that they function properly. Senate Bill 399, as amended, alters educational and experience requirements for applicants seeking licensure as an environmental health specialist and alters the grounds for which the State Board of Environmental Health Specialists may take disciplinary action. There are two amendments to this bill. Amendment 1 is technical. Amendment 2 removes from the bill proposed new language altering the definition of practice as an environmental health specialist. It also removes from the bill proposed new language that would have authorized the State Board of Environmental Health Specialists to approve an examination provider to administer the exam, and also removes from the bill proposed new language relating to final decisions and orders of the board and changes the effective date of the bill. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 399 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 772, Senator Lamb, State Board of Nursing Peer Advisory Committee's scope of practice and licensure requirements, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the bill sponsor as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, 2 years ago, we passed legislation through this body that created a licensed certified midwife. And this bill simply is a cleanup bill. There were things that were missed in that earlier legislation to make this in alignment with other similar midwives. The bill, as amended, authorizes a licensed certified midwife to delegate a technical task to an assistant. It also authorizes a licensed certified nurse midwife or a licensed certified midwife to personally prepare and dispense a starter dose of a drug. It eliminates the requirement that an applicant for a certified midwife license complete coursework in health sciences. It also alters the definitions of practice certified midwifery, practice nurse midwifery, and certified medication technician, and certified nursing assistants. Next, it adds an exception to the licensure requirement to practice certified midwifery. It also authorizes the Board of Nursing to appoint peer advisory committees to provide advice related to midwifery. It requires the board to develop regulations concerning the delegation of technical tasks by licensed certified midwives to assistants. And finally, it requires the Maryland Department of Health to submit a report on recommendations to expand access to birthing centers and birthing services in birthing centers in the state. There's one amendment. The amendment makes technical changes, clarifies the definition of certified medication technician regarding the tasks performed by this technician and the definition of a certified nursing assistant to clarify that practice is subject to regulations adopted by the board. It also clarifies that the education required for an individual be exempt from requirements to be licensed as a certified midwife. There's no fiscal impact. I move the adoption of the single amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 772 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 966, Senator Muse, Prince George's County Workgroup on Health and Wellness, favorable one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 20th District as the floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. The senator from the 26th District did an excellent job in writing this bill, and presented this bill in front of the committee. It establishes a work group on health and wellness in Prince George's County. The work group may establish a subgroup which may include an individual who's not a member of the work group, such as a representative of a relevant expert. By December 1, 2024, the work group must report its findings and recommendations. We added one amendment to this bill, which adds a member of the work group and requires the Prince George's County Health Department to staff the work group. There is no fiscal impact. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 966 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's take the Committee on Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 3535. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 497, Senator Hershey, State Designations, State Spirit, Maryland Rye, favorable with one amendment.
All right. Chair recognizes the senator from Prince George's as the floor leader.
Thank you, colleagues. Colleagues, here's a bill sure to lift your spirits. Maryland is rekindling its long history of rye production and has 15 distilleries in the state. As Kentucky is known for bourbon, where thousands of visitors to Kentucky visit the Bourbon Trail, Kentucky generates more than 22,000 jobs and $285 million in annual tax revenue. Maryland is poised to do the same thing. This bill designates Maryland Rye or Maryland Rye whiskey as the state spirit. The bill passed out of the House unanimously as well as the EEE committee, and there is no fiscal impact. The amendment basically had to do with everybody getting on board. I move adoption of the favorable committee report in a very spirited manner.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? If not, any objections? Without objection, the one amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 497 is hereby ordered printed for third reading.
Mr. President?
Yes.
I have missed the ball a couple of times. I needed to change a couple of amendment votes on 516. Am I too late on that?
Senator is not too late. We're at the end of a calendar. Feel free.
Thank you. Amendment last 424.
Okay, one moment. Let's just make sure that we get it. We'll make sure we have the. Okay, go ahead.
424.
424.
From red to green.
From red to green. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered.
And 922.
922.
From green to red.
Green to red. Any objections? Without.
Thank you.
They were close. They were close. Good question. Without objection, so ordered. All right. Let's go to judicial proceedings. This is calendar number 27. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 57, Senator Bailey, Sexual Offenses, Crime of Violence, and Lifetime Supervision, favorable with one amendment.
All right. Chair recognizes Senator from Frederick County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 57, as amended, this bill expands the definition of a crime of violence under subsection 14-101 of the criminal law article to include sexual abuse of a minor meeting specified criteria and expands the list of offenses that subject an offender to lifetime sexual offender supervision to include sexual abuse of a minor meeting specified criteria and all circumstances of second-degree sexual offense and an attempt to commit a second-degree sexual offense when committed by an adult. The bill applies prospectively to a conviction on or after the bill's October 1st, 2023 effective date. There's one committee amendment. The amendment alters the eligibility for lifetime sexual offender supervision under the bill. The bill has moved favorably out of committee. I move the adoption of the amendments and the favorable committee report.
All right. The floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 57 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 301, Senator Mouts, Local Government Tort Claims Act, Cambridge Waterfront Development, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 34th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 301 adds the nonprofit corporation serving as the Economic Development Authority of the City of Cambridge and Dorchester County to the provisions of the Local Government Tort Claims Act and treats it like other nonprofit corporations already included under that act. It's a local bill with no opposition. We move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, Senate Bill 301 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Let's go ahead. We'll go to some of these second readers. We got a lot of work right now, so we'll see how far we can get. We'll see. All right, a quick note, Senators, just on schedule too, just so that folks sort of know, the capital budget, which we've been waiting for, it's about a week late, has not moved out of the House yet. And so by the 83rd day, it's a requirement that the governor write an executive order to extend session if we've not passed the budget. We're not in possession of the capital budget yet. And so it's impossible for the Senate to act until the budget is provided. So it's likely that on Monday we'll have this executive order, but just note that we're certainly intending to finish the budget on time and it will all be fine. So just as a note, it's all going to work out. All right, let's go to Chair recognizes the Chair of the Capital Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, and the Senate is ready to act.
Oh yes, we've been ready for days. We've been ready for weeks. Thank you. All right, Chair recognizes, or excuse me, let's do the Committee on Finance, number 30.
House Bill 283, Delegate Kaiser, Maryland Medical Assistance Program, Gender Affirming Treatment, Trans Health Equity Act, favorable with one amendment. Chair
recognizes the Senator from Howard and Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 283, which as amended is identical to Senate Bill 460, which passed the Senate earlier this session. It requires Medicaid beginning on January 1st of next year to provide coverage for gender affirming treatment. There's one amendment. It makes a technical change. I move the adoption of the amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? Not. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 283 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 322, Delegate Bagnall, Public Health, Home and Community-Based Services for Children and Youth, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the Senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 322, as amended, is identical to Senate Bill 255, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill requires the Department of Health to expand access and provide reimbursement for specified wraparound intensive home and case management services related to the 1915 Intensive Behavioral Health Services for Children, Youth, and Families program. There's one amendment. It's technical. Move the adoption of the amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 322 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 611, Delegate Kelly, State Board of Nursing, Sunset Extension, Licensure Exceptions, and Board Operations and Membership, favorable with one amendment.
All on the same day. All on the same day. Chair recognizes Senator from Anne
Good
Arundel.
job. Thank you, Mr. President. So House Bill 611, as amended, is now in the identical posture as the Senate Bill 960 that we moved favorable on earlier today. I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Not. Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 611 is hereby ordered printed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 1148, Delegate Moon, Behavioral Health Care Treatment and Access Behavioral Health Model for Maryland, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Anne Arundel as floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 1148 is identical to Senate Bill 582. The bill establishes a Commission on Behavioral Health Care Treatment and Access, creates a Behavioral Health Care Coordination Value-Based Purchasing Pilot Program, extends for 2 years provisions related to telehealth services, requires the Maryland Healthcare Commission to conduct a certain study regarding the delivery of healthcare services through telehealth, and requires the Department of Health to apply for certain federal planning grant funds in fiscal year 2025 and for inclusion in a certified community behavioral health clinic demonstration program for fiscal year 2026. There are no amendments. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1148 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. All right, let's go to. You want to break? Keep going? No. All right, let's go to finance number 32. 32. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 9, Delegate Ruth, Equity and Transportation Sector Guidelines and Analyses, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator from Baltimore City is the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 9 is similar to Senate Bill 19, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill requires the Maryland Department of Transportation, before announcing or proposing any major service change under certain federal standards, to conduct a transit equity analysis, perform a cost-benefit analysis, consult with members and leaders of affected communities, and take specified actions based on the results of their activities. The department must also perform these analyses and consult with affected community members and leaders before announcing any reduction or cancellation of certain capital expansion products. The amendment makes a technical correction. I move the amendment and adoption of favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 9 is hereby ordered passed for third reader. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 37, Delegate Stewart, Commercial Law, Consumer Protection, Telephone Solicitation, Stop the Spam Calls Act of 2023, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes Senator from Montgomery County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, spam. Do I need say anything else? This bill, colleagues. I move the favorable report. Colleagues, House Bill 37, as amended, is identical to Senate Bill 90, which the Senate passed unanimously earlier this session. The bill establishes consumer protections relating to telephone solicitations to residents of the state. Unless prior express written consent provided by the called party, the bill prohibits a person from making a telephone solicitation that involves an automated system. The bill also restricts the methods, times, and identifying information that a solicitor must utilize. The amendment conforms the bill to the Senate cross-file. There is no fiscal impact. Mr. President, I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 37 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 140, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, Unemployment Insurance Recovery of Benefits, Limitation to Methods, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Yeah, I think that was a tough act to follow. Unemployment Insurance Recovery of Benefits, Limitations and Methods. House Bill 140, as amended, is identical to Senate Bill 136, which passed the Senate unanimously earlier this session. The bill limits the amount that the Secretary of Labor may deduct from weekly benefits payable to an unemployment insurance claimant when recovering a UI benefit overpayments that are unrelated to fraud, other overpayment collection options, both for those related to fraud and those unrelated to fraud, remain unchanged. The amendment delays the effective date from October 1st, 2023 to April 1st, 2024, and I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the one amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 140 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 242, Delegate Bagnall, massage therapy definition and reimbursement, favorable with 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 28th District as the floor leader.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Senate Bill 242, House Bill 242, excuse me, is identical to Senate Bill 216, which passed this body unanimously. This bill basically authorizes massage therapists to treat illness, diseases, and injury, and also authorize them to be reimbursed for their services from health plan providers, HMO, third-party administrators. One amendment, technical. Second amendment, delays at the request of the board the date by which the board must stop issuing registrations to practice massage therapy in a setting that is not a health care setting for 1 year. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 242 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 376, Delegate Sample Hughes, health insurance, diagnostic, and supplemental examinations for breast cancer, cost sharing, favorable with 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from Anne Arundel as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 376, Health Insurance Diagnostic and Supplemental Exams, is similar to Senate Bill 184, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill prohibits health insurance carriers that provide coverage for a diagnostic breast examination or a supplemental breast examination from imposing a co-payment, co-insurance, or deductible requirement for such examinations. Amendment 1 makes changes to the purpose paragraph. Amendment 2 clarifies a provision applicable to high deductible health plans. And Amendment 3 requires the Maryland Health Care Commission to study and report on the financial impact eliminating health insurance cost sharing for diagnostic imaging-guided biopsies for breast cancer and changes the effective date of the bill. There was no opposition at the committee hearing. I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 3 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 376 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Last one of the day for finance. Last one of the day. This is number 33. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 548, the Speaker, Financial Regulation, Maryland Community Investment Venture Fund Establishment Access to Banking Act, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, House Bill 548 is similar to Senate Bill 550, which passed the Senate earlier this session. This is an administration bill, which basically has focus by the banking industry in low to moderate income communities, encourages them to expand or open branches in low to moderate income communities, and to come up with innovative ways to look at providing funding to those who are looking for funds in low to moderate income communities. And the House made a couple of technical and clarifying changes to the bill, expressly stating that the fund is an instrumentality of the state and requiring the Commissioner of Financial Regulation to establish a governance structure for the fund. The amendment makes those technical corrections. Mr. President, I move the amendment and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 548 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 794, Delegate Bridges, Baltimore Regional Transit Commission Establishment, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 794 is the same as Senate Bill 876, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill establishes the Baltimore Regional Transit Commission. Among other duties, the purpose of the commission is to provide input and engage in advocacy for the Baltimore region public transit systems maintained by the Maryland Transit Administration, and review and comment on service change reports and other transit-related plans and reports. The commission will be staffed by the Baltimore Metropolitan Council. The amendment The amendment makes a technical correction. I move the amendment and adoption on a favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 794 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 814, Delegate Carr, Maryland Health Benefit Exchange, State-Based Youth Health Adult Insurance Subsidies Pilot Program, Sunset Extension, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 12 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 814 is same as Senate Bill 601, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill extends the termination date of the state-based Young Adult Health Insurance Subsidies Pilot Program for an additional 2 years through 2025. The program provides a state-funded premium subsidy to help young adults reduce the amount they pay for health plans offered through the Maryland Health Connection. Subject to the availability of funds in each fiscal year under the pilot program, the Maryland Health Benefit Exchange may continue to provide up to $20 million from the MHBE fund in annual subsidies to young adults under the program. There is one amendment. It makes a technical correction to move the adoption of the amendment in the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 814 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 815, Delegate Fennell, Cancer Screening, Health Insurance, and Assessment of Outreach, Education, Health Disparities, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the Senate. House Bill 815 is the same as Senate Bill 965, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill requires health insurance carriers to provide coverage for recommended follow-up diagnostic imaging to assist in the diagnosis of lung cancer. The bill prohibits a carrier from imposing a co-payment, co-insurance, or deductible requirement for the coverage that is greater than the co-payment, co-insurance, or deductible requirement for breast cancer screening and diagnosis. The amendment makes a technical correction, and I move the amendment and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 815 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1217, Delegate Tolles, Maryland Medical Assistance Program and Health Insurance, required coverage for biomarker testing, favorable with two amendments.
Chair recognizes Senator from Charles County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senators, House Bill 1217 is similar to Senate Bill 805, which the Senate passed earlier this session. The bill requires health insurance carriers and Medicaid to provide coverage for biomarker testing for the purpose of diagnosis, treatment, appropriate management, or ongoing monitoring of a disease or condition that is supported by medical and scientific evidence. There are two amendments to this bill. Amendment 1 makes technical corrections, and Amendment 2 aligns the bill to the Senate crossfire by requiring the Maryland Department of Health to include a report on Medicaid coverage for biomarker testing, whether the amount of reimbursement for the testing should be capped, and if recommended, the cap amount and anticipated fiscal and access impacts from the cap. Mr. President, I move the amendments and the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the two committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the two committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 1217 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. All right, let's go to Education, Energy, and the Environment. This is report number 33. Clerk, read the first bill.
House Bill 178, Delegate Resnick, State Designation, State Spirit, Maryland Rye, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 23rd, potentially. No? Prince George's? Crossfile?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a direct crossfile of the earlier bill.
All right. The senator moves the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Not. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 178 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 671, Delegate Heinbaugh, Garrett County Board of County Commissioners meetings favorable to 2 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This cross-filed bill requires the Garrett County Commissioners to hold public meetings in person or through a live stream at least twice a month. The bill also prohibits the Garrett County Commissioners from meeting solely through a live stream for more than 2 consecutive meetings in the absence of a formal declaration of a state of emergency. There are 2 committee amendments. The first one makes technical changes, and the second modifies the term live stream to become live video streaming for purposes of remote meetings. I'd like to move for adoption of the 2 committee amendments and a favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 2 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 2 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? Not. All in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report. Oh, I'm going to sneeze. Not coming. All right. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 671 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 843, Delegate Smith, Baltimore Regional Water Governance Task Force favorable with 1 amendment. This is an emergency bill.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 10 as the floor leader.
Thanks, Mr. President. As amended, House Bill 843 is substantially the same as Senate Bill 880, as unanimously passed by the Senate. This emergency bill establishes the Baltimore Regional Water Governance Task Force to study and make recommendations regarding the governance model best suited for water and water waste systems in Baltimore region. There is 1 committee amendment. The amendment adds intent language specifying that the task force should strengthen the governance of Baltimore region's water and wastewater utility as a public asset. Mr. President, move the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 843 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 874, Delegate Stewart, offers the Attorney General Environmental and Natural Resources Crimes Unit establishment favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is essentially the same as the Senate bill that we've already passed. It would allow the Attorney General to set up an environmental division, whether it's about discharging, whether it's about hazardous waste, pollutants, or other important environmental matters. It would allow better enforcement. There's 1 amendment that just changes some technical titles, so I move the adoption of the amendment and the favorable report. Thank you.
All right. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 874 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. All right, stick with same committee, report number 34. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 78, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, Public Schools, Anaphylactic Food Allergies Guidelines favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is the cross-file to the bill that this body has already passed unanimously. There's an amendment that clarifies dealing with items with sesame. I'd like to move the adoption of the favorable report with 1 amendment.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 1 amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 1 committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 78 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 402, Delegate Jacobs, Kent County Board of Education, student member, favorable with 1 amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from the Lower Eastern Shore as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 402, as amended, is identical to Senate Bill 402, as passed unanimously by the Senate. This bill codifies a non-voting student member of the Kent County Board of Education into statute and specifies the selection method and responsibilities of the student member. The bill makes other conforming changes as well. The student member serves a one-year term, and the initial term of the student member must begin on July 1st, 2024. This amendment clarifies the eligibility criteria for that student member and strikes a requirement that the new student member attend certain Board of Education meetings before the start of their term. I move adoption of the one committee amendment and a favorable committee report.
All right.
HB 402.
Thank you. Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 402 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 770, Delegate Atterbury, Blueprint for Maryland's Future Publicly Funded Pre-Kindergarten Maryland Consortium on Coordinated County Supports and Career Letter Alterations. Favorable of 3 amendments.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, this is identical as amended. This is identical to the bill we've already passed in the Senate. There are 3 technical amendments. The first, just technical changes. The second and third deals with career ladder and making sure that our Title I little people have access to great educational opportunities from the youngest ages. I move adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the 3 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, Chair recognizes the minority whip.
Thank you, Mr. President. I actually, Mr. President, my apologies. My questions are answered without asking them. Thank you.
It's the best type. Best type. Any discussion on the amendments? Any discussion on the amendments? If not, any objection to the amendments? Without objection, the 3 amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 770 is hereby ordered passed to third reading. Let's go to judicial proceedings. This is calendar number 28. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 13, Delegate Crutchfield, Hate Crimes, Civil Remedy, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill authorizes a person who is the victim of an act that would constitute a violation of the state's hate crime laws to bring a civil action against person or persons who committed such act. This bill is the cross-file of SB 5 that passed unanimously. There were no committee amendments. Mr. President, I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 13 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 18, Delegate Hill, Maryland General and Limited Power of Attorney Act, alterations, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from Baltimore City as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is in the same posture as its cross-file Senate Bill 851, which passed unanimously. It simply offers an opportunity for persons to obtain a limited power of attorney to help people in need to obtain government benefits. I would move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, the floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 18 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 66, Delegate Bartlett, Circuit Courts and District Court, dishonored checks, service charges, favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from 34th District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 66 is identical to the Senate Bill 99 that this body passed a little earlier. This bill increases from $10 to $30 the amount of the service charge for a dishonored check that the circuit or district court can impose. There's no opposition. Move for the adoption of the favorable committee report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 66 is ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 72, Business Regulation, Charitable Organizations, favorable with one amendment.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. As amended, this bill is identical to Senate Bill 554, which passed the Senate unanimously. The bill alters the definition of charitable contribution and authorizes the Secretary of State to accept certain documentation in place of an audit or review in a charitable organization's registration statement. There was one committee amendment that conforms the bill to SB 254 by adding additional requirements for an organization to submit documents in place of an audit or review. Mr. President, I move the amendment as well as the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the one committee amendment and the favorable committee report. On the amendment, any discussion? Not. Any objections? Without objection, the one committee amendment is adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 72 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 98, Delegate Arentz. Arentz, there we go. Condominiums, mandatory insurance coverage, alterations favorable with 4 amendments.
Chair recognizes the senator from District 1 as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 98 is a cross-file of Senate Bill 403. In short, it alters the types of elements and units on which the council of unit owners are required to maintain certain property insurance. Now, it also alters certain requirements for property insurance policies as requiring owners of detached units to carry homeowners insurance of the entirety of the unit. Now, there were 4 amendments. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds the language exempting condominiums consisting of detached units from requirement to certain information of shared improvements of units or the common elements in the declaration. Amendment number 3 deletes language requiring owners of detached units to carry homeowners insurance of the entirety of the unit. Amendment number 4 makes conforming language changes. Mr. President, I move a favorable with amendments, 4 of them, to confirm to the cross-file Senate Bill 403 report.
All right, floor leader moves for the adoption of the 4 committee amendments and the favorable committee report. On the amendments, any discussion? Any objections? Without objection, the 4 committee amendments are adopted. Question now is on the amended report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report as amended is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill, further amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 98 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 118, Delegate Holmes, ground leases, notices, and billing forms and requirements favorable.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 44th as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is in the same posture as this cross-file bill, Senate Bill 194, which passed this floor unanimously. This bill enhances the notice and billing requirements as applicable when a ground leaseholder brings an action for possession for a non-payment of ground rent, a ground leaseholder seeks payment on the ground rent, or ground rent is transferred, as well as some additional things. There were no committee amendments. Mr. President, I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 118 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 131, Delegate Moon, criminal law, unnatural or perverted sexual practice, repeal, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill repeals the crime of unnatural or perverted sexual practices under Section 3-322 of the Criminal Law Article and makes conforming and technical changes due to the repeal. It also prohibits the expungement of a conviction under these circumstances. The bill is identical to Senate Bill 54, which passed the Senate 34-11. There are no committee amendments. I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. Favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 131 is hereby passed to third reading. Clerk, read the next bill.
House Bill 189, Delegate Moon, automatic expungement, clarification, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Vice Chair of the Committee as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is a technical change under Chapter 680 of 2021 regarding automatic expungement. This bill is similar to Senate Bill 173, which passed this chamber unanimously. There are no committee amendments. I move the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? Yes, Chair recognizes Minority Whip.
Mr. President, would the floor leader yield for one question?
The floor leader yields. Senator may proceed.
Did you said it's similar but not identical.
That's right. So the bills were drafted slightly differently. There was a technical change that the House made. The technical change of the House is the better way to draft the bill, and so we took the House version of the bill because it includes the technical change that's necessary.
Can you just remind us what this is seeking to clarify?
Sure, happy to. In 2021, this chamber passed legislation for the automatic expungement of non-convictions. In other words, where someone received a not guilty verdict or a similar verdict, that could be automatically expunged. The way the bill was drafted caused a misinterpretation by the publisher of our code. So as you recall, we don't publish our own code. That's done by a company, third-party company called Mitchie's, that puts a title on top of each section of code. The title that they put on top of this section of code was inaccurate because they were misreading the bill. When we requested that they alter that title, which is read by judges and other people interpreting our law, they refused to do so and asked that we change our wording to make it clearer. That's what this bill does.
So this does non-convictions. Does it do null pros? Is that part of this, or any? I'm just trying to remember the bill.
That's correct. A non-conviction includes a null pros.
But a probation before judgment is not automatically expunged.
I do not believe so, no. A PBJ is not considered a non-conviction for purposes of this bill.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, President.
Thank you, Senator. All right, question remains on the report. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 189 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 193, Delegate Moon, probation before judgment, probation agreements favorable.
Chair recognizes Senator from the 42nd District as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill is identical to Senate Bill 211, which passed the Senate 41-4. The bill authorizes a court to place a defendant on probation before judgment if the defendant pleads not guilty, if the court finds facts justifying a finding of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, and if other specified conditions are met. There are no committee amendments. I hereby move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 193 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 215, Delegate Polakovich-Carr, real property limitations on summoning law enforcement or emergency services, prohibition, favorable.
Chair recognizes the Senator from Frederick County as the floor leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. House Bill 215 regarding limitations on summoning of law enforcement or emergency services. The prohibition, the committee recommendation was a favorable. This exact cross-file passed 45-1 from this chamber on SB 450. There are no committee amendments. And again, this bill as presented unanimously passed favorable out of committee. I move the adoption of the favorable committee report.
Floor leader moves for the adoption of the favorable committee report. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of the report say aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The favorable committee report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or its title? Seeing none, House Bill 215 is hereby ordered passed for third reading. Before we jump to the next thing, Senator from Montgomery County and Olney.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, the proud senator of Olney, Maryland. But we have a great group of students and faculty and staff here today from the Washington Christian Academy, and I wish we can give them all a very welcome from the State Senate of Maryland. Welcome.
Welcome. Welcome. You all caught us at the tail end of our day, so we don't have anything too exciting, but hopefully it's a little taste of democracy in action here. We're going to go to the executive nominations report. Madam Clerk, if we could read the report.
Report number 8, the Senate Executive Nominations Committee reports favorably on the attached gubernatorial appointments and recommends that the Senate of Maryland advise and consent to these appointments. Pamela G. Beidel, Chair.
Chair recognizes Chair of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. President. Calendar number 8 is a calendar that includes 24 of the 25 people that we heard on Monday night. And if you'll look on your list, under the other tab, there are 55 statewide, 141 local nominees. So I suggest you look for your nominees and make sure you approve them all. And I'm requesting, Mr. President, that we consider these nominees in regular session tomorrow, Friday, under Rule 22A, and move that we special order the report to the appropriate time then. Thank you.
All right, the Senator has moved that we hear the report in open session tomorrow and that we special order the report until tomorrow. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Senators, please make sure to look at the list. Please look through the list. If there's any folks that individuals would like to separate out, we will do so tomorrow. Let's do it. Madam Clerk, could we ring the bells? Madam Secretary, rather. All right, let's do a quorum call for third reading calendar.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. We're going to go with third reading calendar number 60. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 526, Senator Elfreth, Natural Resources, Forest Preservation and Retention.
Senate Bill 526 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 46 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 526, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 971, Senator James, Real Property Recordation Procedures.
Senate Bill 971 is on third reading for final passage. Any discussion? If not, clerk will call the roll.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Anyone wish to change their vote? Explain their vote. If not, the clerk will take the call. With 47 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 971, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Chair recognizes the senator from District 10. Did Senator want to be recorded? Senator moves to be recorded in the green on the prior bill. Are there any objections? With that, what's the number? 526. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. All right. We're going to pause there. We're going to stop there today. The rest we have are House bills, and so we'll just take them up tomorrow. The House committee knows that we've gone till 1, so they understand. So hopefully they'll accommodate a little bit of a later start for their bill hearings for cross-filed bills or for Senate bills over there. Let's see. Let's go to the Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. President. And colleagues, Senate Finance will meet today at 1:45 for a brief bill hearings. And note, our voting session for today will be postponed. We will not be voting today.
All right, 1:45. Chair recognizes the Chair of Education, Energy, and the Environment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. The EEE committee will meet at 1:45 for bill hearings and a short voting session immediately thereafter. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes Chair of Budget and Tax.
Thank you, Mr. President. Budget Tax will meet at 2 o'clock for bill hearings, followed by voting.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Chair of Judicial Proceedings.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Judicial Proceedings Committee will meet today at 1:45 for bill hearings, followed by a very short voting session.
All right, 1:45. Any other standing committees? Select committees, joint committees, caucuses. Chair recognizes the Chair of the Anne Arundel. Nope. Announcement? Senator from the capital city.
Sure. I've been asked to share with the body that the Irish American Heritage Caucus is having an event tonight to support the Special Olympics of Maryland. It is tonight at 7:30 at the Annapolis Waterfront Marriott, and I hope that everybody can drop by and support the Special Olympics of Maryland. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Chair recognizes the Chair of the Baltimore City delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Baltimore City delegation will meet tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock virtually. We'll hear House bills and tie up any loose ends on Senate bills. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. All right, Chair of the Prince George's County delegation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Prince George's County will meet tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. in the Neal Room. 10 a.m. Neal Room.
10 a.m. tomorrow. Chair recognizes the Chair of the Baltimore County delegation.
Thank you very much. The Baltimore County delegation will actually be meeting after session tomorrow in the Schweinhof room.
All right, excellent. Any other announcements for the good of the order? Chair recognizes the Senator from District 6.
Thank you, Mr. President. Real quick, tomorrow morning, our legislative prayer breakfast at Cowart will be there at 7:30. Again, special speaker, and we do have a duet coming from the Naval Academy. We are maxed out. We're going to have a good time. So bright and early. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Wonderful. All right, any further piece of business? Tomorrow's going to be a longer day on the floor, so just keep that in mind. We're going to be on the floor for a while tomorrow. Get through everything we got. So, anything else? If not, let's do a quorum call.
Mr. President?
Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. With 47-6 members in the chamber and a quorum being present, the Senate of Maryland remains in session. Chair recognizes the Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the Senate of Maryland stand adjourned until Friday, March 31st at 11 a.m.
11 a.m. Without objection, so ordered. Have a phenomenal day, everyone.